Hello and welcome to GameSack. This time it's all about Double Dragon.
That's exactly right. The grandfather game of the beat-em-up series. This is the one that started the craze.
Yes, it is. So let's get started. We've got a lot to cover. Double Dragon was released to the arcades in 1987. It was developed by Technos and distributed in the US by Taito. It's the game that made beat-em-ups popular. Some people actually call this genre belt scrollers. Okay. Anyway, Billy and Jimmy are locked away in a garage doing secret things while your girlfriend Marion is locked outside. She gets kidnapped for whatever stupid reason, and now you guys have to stop whatever you are doing and rescue her. You get to beat up thugs along the way using a variety of different moves and objects. By far the most powerful move in the game is this elbow smash, which you can use to plow through the entire game. It usually works pretty well unless the enemies surround you. What's kinda cool is that the first 3 stages are treated as one continuous scene without any black screens or titles in between them. The game also features some unforgettable tunes. It's all pretty fun, but when there are 3 or more enemies on screen, this game really slows down to a crawl. It's actually kind of pathetic for an arcade game. You know, I grew up with Sega, so this was all very strange to me. The flaws in this game were definitely overlooked back in the day, but I've got to admit that it still has a lot of charm and the game remains virtually timeless.
Double Dragon was ported to the NES the very next year. A lot of differences in this port make it probably the least fun of all the versions of Double Dragon for me. Firstly, the lack of 2-player simultaneous play was everyone's biggest gripe. It's because they could only put 3 sprites on screen at once, you and 2 enemies. It wouldn't be very fun if it was you, your buddy, and just 1 enemy. Speaking of limitations, you may also notice that the 2 enemies you are fighting are identical. Lazy programming? Maybe.
I'm gonna say that's definitely the case with this game. The NES can do better than we're seeing here, and that's coming from a Sega guy.
Now, my next gripe is that an experience system has been added. You start out with minimal moves you can perform, and once you level up, you can gain access to new moves. This just doesn't work well in a game of this nature, and it really adds no extra value at all. Overall, the control is good, and the game moves at its usual slow pace with a lot of added scenes and areas which weren't in the arcade. The music is by far the best part of the game. The melodies are very memorable, and honestly, I'd rather listen to this version than the arcade. Added to the package is a one-on-one fighting game with either player 1 versus the CPU or player 1 versus player 2. You can only pick one character and both players will battle using the same fighter. It's nice to have, I guess, but it doesn't make up for the lack of a real 2-player co-op mode.
Double Dragon was ported to the Sega Master System soon thereafter. This version offered 2-player simultaneous gameplay, and that was its main draw. The graphics were bright and more colorful, and while I liked the music, I always thought the NES version sounded better. It has the same 4 levels from the arcade, but like the NES version, they're separated and not continuous. The jump kicks are easiest to do in this version, but I can't seem to do an elbow smash. While the NES version could only put 2 enemies on the screen at once, the Master System version could put nearly 3. I say nearly because there's so much flicker that they're not always completely there. In 2-player mode, the flicker gets even worse. It's also kind of weird when the game tries to scroll vertically. Did they forget how to do this when they made the game or something? And the color palette is sometimes weird, like in level 3, some of the enemies turn green. Hell, even the rock is green. I know the Abobo is supposed to be green, but I don't think all the other guys in the rock are. But overall, it's a pretty good port for an 8-bit system. Of course, let's not forget that Double Dragon was also ported to the Atari 7800 by Activision. As you can see, the graphics are pretty lacking, though I guess they're pretty good for the 7800, but the music really makes you want to turn the sound off. The control is also pretty stiff. Not really much going on here. Activision also ported it to the Atari 2600 surprisingly. This game is damn tough to control, mainly because it's so slow. The graphics are obviously very minimal and the sound is perhaps even more piercing, but it's more or less the same. Not much more to say about these versions.
Double Dragon on the Game Boy is surprisingly fun. It plays very similar to the NES game, but it doesn't have that stupid leveling up system that version has. You have access to all the moves right from the start. This game's 4 missions can be beaten fairly quickly. It's not a hard game by any means, and you'll probably kill yourself more than the enemies will. You'll be falling off a lot of ledges. The platforming in this game is hideous. Why does a beat 'em up even have platforming? Check out this jump in Mission 3. I'm pretty damn sure I landed that jump, but according to the game, I overshot it. Lame. Oh well, it's still a very playable game. The music once again is by far the best attribute of this game. The melodies have that Game Boy sound that I love so much. Good stuff. You can now download this game from the 3DS eShop if you feel so inclined.
Double Dragon was brought to the Genesis by Ballistic, aka Accolade, and was not licensed by Sega for play on the console. The game has some pretty good graphics and they're fairly close to the arcade, if not even a touch more colorful, but you know, that's really as good as this version gets. The sound and music are both pretty bland, but it's the gameplay that really destroys the experience here. Dave said that the NES port is the least fun of the different versions of this game, but I'm gonna have to say that this one is much worse. The enemies move almost as fast as you do, and your guy moves really, really fast. They really corner you, and it's very difficult to actually attack. Even if you're attacking someone else, another guy can just break in and start attacking you. God, just leave me alone for a second so I can attack! The elbow smash is here if you can get it to work, but it really won't do you much good. Sometimes I press buttons and my character doesn't even do anything. You also walk way too close to the edge of the screen, and that can result in some untimely deaths if you're not really careful. Now the game moves really, really fast, but yes, it still has some slowdown. Check this out, we've got 2 players, 3 enemies, a bat, and a barrel on screen at the same time, and the game severely slows down. You think it's all the enemies slowing it down, right? Nope, an enemy died and it's still going just as slow. Now an enemy is picking up the barrel. The barrel is tossed and it disappears. The game speeds back up. It was the barrel! Not a good port at all.
Another little fact that'll make you laugh is that this version sells for about $50 complete on eBay.
There was even a version of Double Dragon for the Atari Lynx. For the most part, it's pretty faithful to the arcade as far as looks go, but it's really zoomed in and the characters stand almost the entire height of the screen. This means things can get really crowded really fast. There's lots of stuff missing from this version, mainly sections of each level. The graphics are a blurry, blocky, and choppy mess, but like I said, pretty faithful. The sound is very 8-bit-ish and nowhere near as good as the NES version. The choppiness hinders the gameplay and the controls a little, but it's not awful. The Game Boy Advance got, well, Double Dragon Advance. They basically took the first game and remade it, but they didn't stop there. They took some characters, music, and other elements from Double Dragon 2, like this boss here for example. There's also a bunch of original stages and weapons. It plays fairly well, but the game is zoomed in due to the Game Boy Advance's small screen, though nowhere near as bad as the Lynx version. What's kind of annoying is that this game piles enemies on you and it's hard to get an attack in before another enemy takes you out. The controls are kind of annoying too, since the R button acts as your jump.
Also, I noticed in this version, if you hit the punch button 10 times, you will punch 10 times. This sucks because you think you're gonna lay into your enemy with a barrage of punches, but you aren't even close to him. You show that air who's boss, Billy.
The elbow smash is here, but it's been significantly weakened in this version. The graphics are pretty nice and the music is kind of scratchy, but overall this is a pretty good version of this game. And the last port of Double Dragon we'll look at is for the iPhone. I can't get very far because of the way I had to hold it to record this, so sorry. Anyway, the game itself is okay. It's basically a complete remake. Nearly half the screen is blocked by the buttons, which in turn are blocked by your thumbs. You know, I really don't like playing games on the iOS. I just can't stress this enough. I need to feel my buttons instead of seeing them, and I don't like my controller being on the actual screen. Alright, let's go right. Well, I said let's go right. God, it's so hard to even press the button to go right. Anyway, the moves in the game seem over-exaggerated, and I don't think they did a tremendously good job with the game, though the graphics are pretty good. The remixed music is pretty nice, but it's in mono, which is just, come on, guys. It's $2 on the App Store, and, well, I want a refund. In 1988, Double Dragon 2 The Revenge appeared in the arcades. The bad guys aren't dicking around this time, they murder Marion right at the start of the game. You could have prevented it, but once again, you and the other guy were alone together in the garage doing who knows what.
Come on, Joe, they're just fixing their helicopter like normal guys do. I mean, I would be suspicious if Jimmy came out with his pants around his ankles, but he didn't, so all's good.
This game changed the controls around a bit by putting the jump button in the middle. The left button would attack to the left no matter which direction you were facing, and likewise with the right button. It's just like the old beat-em-up Renegade, which Technos made before Double Dragon. It takes a bit of getting used to, but it's pretty effective once you do. The elbow smash is still here, though it doesn't seem quite as powerful as it was in the first game. What's kind of funny is that the enemies love doing cartwheels. Am I fighting a gang of gymnasts or something? The game seems to run on the same engine as the original game, and it has some slowdown too, but it doesn't seem quite as severe. And the second level boss fight seems to take place in the exact same location as the first game. But overall, this is a pretty good entry into the series.
Double Dragon 2 The Revenge on the NES is better than the first Double Dragon, but not by much. I say this in the kindest way possible because the game is completely fun and playable. Let's start with the good stuff. 2-player simultaneous play has been added.
Yeah, see, this game has much better programming than the first one.
There are 2 types of game modes, A and B. In game mode A, you can't hurt each other, while you can in game mode B. Also, while this game isn't really a faithful port of the arcade, they did add a lot of missions and lengthen the game quite a bit. Now, for the bad stuff. The cheap deaths are a major complaint. Falling off of levels or getting hit or thrown off of platforms to an immediate loss of life is frustrating, especially when the game offers no continues. Each life becomes precious, so you've got to watch yourself at all times. Second is the control scheme. It's beyond bizarre, but you do get used to it.
I like the control scheme. It's like the arcade, just without the jump button in the middle.
Yeah, the B button always attacks left and the A button attacks right no matter which way you're facing. You don't have dedicated punch or kick buttons. Like I said, it's beyond crazy, but it does work. Finally, like the first game, this one suffers from only having 2 of the same enemy sprites on screen at any given time. Why this is, I don't know, and once you notice, you can't forget it. And who keeps opening these doors in the helicopter?
Double Dragon 2 also came to the Genesis, or the Mega Drive rather, as it was never released outside of Japan. This one stays more true to the arcade version, but it's still pretty gimpy. For one, the graphics are pretty flat, dark, and undetailed. It looks much worse than Ballistic's version of Double Dragon 1 on the same system. They also moved the score and the life meters down to the bottom of the screen on top of a giant black bar for some reason. The gameplay is pretty much intact, except it suffers from extreme slowdown. You can feel the game slowing down simply walking across the screen even though you're the only character there. Talk about unoptimized. The cartwheeling enemies are still here, though they're not quite as enthusiastic about doing them. The elbow smash is also here. They changed stage 2 around and made it longer for whatever reason, climbing ladders all over the place. The sound effects are almost laughable. Listen to when they die. Sounds like dry heaves. The music is pretty good though, perhaps even slightly better sounding than the arcade. Definitely the highlight of this game. Although this game is pretty bad, I'd still rather play it than Ballistic's port of Double Dragon 1. Double Dragon 2 came to the PC Engine Super CD in Japan. Unfortunately, it was never released in the US on the Turbo Duo. What's kind of interesting is it's based on the NES version instead of the arcade game. You know, I've got to say that I really enjoyed this version. The graphics are better than the arcade and the gameplay feels super tight and not a bit unfair. The music is pretty much completely new. It's not bad music, just different. There are also cutscenes between each stage, just like you'd expect. Do you remember how in the NES version you fought inside a helicopter and the screen was really small? Well, this game knew that was unacceptable, so that helicopter flies into a bigger helicopter and now you can fight full screen. After you fight through this stage and its faulty doors that won't stay closed, you're suddenly about to crash into a remote island jungle. How much you want to bet there's people here who want to beat me up too? This is a great game that's lots of fun. Granted, it's no Streets of Rage and I can't even figure out how to do an elbow smash, but overall, it's a really solid beat 'em up. Double Dragon 2 even made it to the Game Boy. This one really has nothing to do with the other versions. The control is completely different, and instead of jumping when you press both B and A at the same time, you now kneel. It's sometimes really hard to hit the bosses, which have a much longer reach than you do. Overall, there's really not much special about this version. Double Dragon 3 The Rosetta Stone came to the arcades in 1990. This time you're out to get a bunch of Rosetta Stones for some old fortune teller. Of course you'll do whatever she says, so now you must fly around the entire world trying to get the different stones. Right away you'll notice how choppy this game is. I mean, just look how everything moves around. Everything runs very slowly, the fighting engine is poorly implemented, it's like they barely even tried. The game also features a shop where you can buy extra power, tricks, or more guys by putting coins into the machine. It's kind of a clever way to get some extra income. Though if you buy extra guys, when you die, you're suddenly using a different dude who seems to be even harder to control. The graphics and music are both fairly nice, but the punching sound effects are really loud. This game was pretty much a failure in the arcades.
Double Dragon 3 was ported to the NES and it sucks. Apparently, the developers are sadists. They want you to suffer so much that instead of having a fun game to play, you ultimately end up just hating it and cursing everything about it. Good luck getting anywhere in this game. Right from the start, your enemies seem to have the upper hand, and they'll be able to land punches and kicks, and you seem to struggle to get your hits in. I can't even make it halfway into the first stage. What do you expect with only one life and one continue? I'm sure you could cheat and use a Game Genie if you want to, but I don't care enough for this game to even try.
Double Dragon 3 also came to the Genesis. It's a fairly decent port of the arcade game and it certainly moves a lot more smoothly, making it much more enjoyable to play, but that's really not saying much. The fighting engine is really stiff and the collision detection seems pretty bad most of the time. Like in the arcade version, you're flying all over the world beating people up. I like how when I'm in the desert I suddenly get sucked into the sand. What's beneath the sand? Why, an entire forest of trees, of course. You can earn coins to spend in the shop here instead of having to actually insert them into the machine. The graphics are okay and the music is also, well, okay. This is definitely the best version of Double Dragon 3 on the planet, but again, that's not saying much. It's worth it if you see it really, really cheap. There's also a version of Double Dragon 3 for the Game Boy. Man, these Game Boy versions just keep getting worse and worse. This one is very tough to control. Plus, it puts a lot of enemies on the screen at once, making it hard to tell just what the hell is even going on. Trying to knock these guys off of their motorcycle really sucks, and you know what? So does this game.
That damn Double Dragon on the NES, Joe, it pisses me off so much that if I had hair, I'd pull it out of my head.
Yeah, it is a really stupid game. I agree with you. But, you know, we're about 20 minutes into the episode. We still got a bunch of Double Dragon games to cover. So maybe you could show us a good Double Dragon game instead.
Yeah, that's no problem.
Okay.
Take a look at this one. Super Double Dragon is actually the 4th game in the Double Dragon series. This game is original and not based off of an arcade. As you can see, the game looks pretty nice. Sadly though, the game still runs fairly slow, and I'm at a loss wondering if it's because of the Super Nintendo's slow processor, or if it's the actual pacing the developers wanted. The control of the game is still very good, and some new moves have been added. Besides the typical punch, kick, and jump, there is also a new block button. Not only does this allow for blocking, but if you time it right, you can actually get your enemy into a hold and thrash them soundly with lots of punches or kicks. It's really satisfying to deal out this kind of punishment, especially after playing the crappy Double Dragon 3. There's also another bar under the life gauge which the player can fill by holding down the L or R buttons. While the gauge is filling up, the player can perform special attacks which vary depending on how much power the player has accumulated. But be on the lookout, as your enemies will constantly try and sandwich you. The music is solid. There are a few really good tracks that give the game the extra appeal to keep you going. But on the other hand, there are also some tracks that leave a bit to be desired. On a system that has more than its fair share of beat-em-ups, this game has a rightful place towards the top. Not number 1, mind you, but it's close. Double Dragon 5 is a prime example of letting a Western development team ruin a franchise.
This game also appeared on the Super Nintendo and even the Atari Jaguar, but this is the Genesis version here.
Firstly, this game's based off the Double Dragon cartoon, so instead of keeping the series true to its roots with a side-scrolling beat-em-up, Leland Interactive turned it into a one-on-one fighting game. It's your typical Street Fighter clone that utterly fails in every aspect. The control is slow and less than responsive. It has its fair share of moves, but you can't pull them off on a consistent basis. Each fighter is poorly drawn and there's really nothing appealing about any of them, so it's almost torture trying to choose which character to be. I'm not going to lie to you, Joe, this game is crap.
Okay, did you think I liked the game or something? Because I don't. Taking a beat 'em up and turning it into a weapons-based fighter is never really a good idea. Also, where's a Bobo? Stay far away from this one.
Battletoads and Double Dragon was developed by Rare. This is the Genesis version, but it's also on the NES, SNES, and even the Game Boy. It's a crossover game with characters from both franchises. For the sake of this review, I used a Double Dragon character since this is a Double Dragon episode. You start out in space. No spacesuit? No problem. There's only one attack button and a jump button, so it's fairly basic. The graphics in this game are colorful but don't have a ton of detail, but hey, it's the Genesis. The character animations are good for the most part, and it's really fun to beat up your enemies. Sometimes though, it feels like you're fighting on ice as you and your enemies slide around quite a bit. It definitely feels like Battletoads. They've even added the hover bikes just to break things up a bit and let you know this is more Battletoads than Double Dragon. All in all, it's a decent crossover and a good game for your collection.
It's also pretty damn hard. I have no idea what I'm supposed to do in this part. I know I'm supposed to grab onto that box maybe, but nothing happens and I just keep dying. I managed to do it once, but I have absolutely no idea what I did. Fun game, but hard. There's a Game Gear game called Double Dragon, but it's not based on the arcade game. It's its own unique game and, well, it pretty much sucks. Virgin made this one and it's choppy as hell. You can even get a gun to shoot your opponents. Good luck holding on to it though. Everything is very choppy, the music is poor, and the game has virtually nothing to do with Double Dragon. I couldn't play it for very long because not only is it pretty tough due to the unresponsive control, it's just not very fun either. There was also a Neo Geo version simply called Double Dragon. Like Double Dragon 5, this is a one-on-one fighter instead of a beat-em-up because one-on-one fighters were the only games people wanted to play back then. While Double Dragon 5 was based on the cartoon, this one was based on the glorious Double Dragon movie. To be fair, it's not a horrible game, but it's really not tremendously great either. Your buttons will either kick or punch depending on what's going on in the game, and I didn't really care for that. The game zooms in and out constantly, which was pretty much expected of most Neo Geo fighting games of the time. The graphics are pretty good, and I can't really complain about the sound. But everything else seems so average. Plus, it's not a beat 'em up, so it loses a lot of its charm because of that. This one's also on the PlayStation. Finally, we'll take a look at Double Dragon Neon, a brand new Double Dragon game for your PS3 or Xbox 360. It gives you an original new game running at full 1080p and a soundtrack done by former overclocked remix nemesis Vert. The first thing you're going to want to do is turn the tutorials off. There's no need for them in a game like this. The game is pretty much tongue-in-cheek and it has a great sense of humor for the most part. Touchdown! Marion is miraculously living again and gets kidnapped. Again, when it happens, you're hanging out inside of the garage.
Not this again.
As you play through the game, you'll see lots of elements from the first 3 Double Dragon games. The opening of the game, the Abobo busting through the wall, and more all come from the first game. You've got cartwheeling enemies from Double Dragon 2 and even the shops from Double Dragon 3.
Your money always welcome.
There's more references as well if you keep your eyes peeled. The gameplay itself is generally solid. I thought it was kind of hard at first, but you can power up pretty quickly and it becomes easier. Speaking of the power-ups, the way this is implemented is really the only thing I don't like. You collect cassette tapes which extend your abilities, but to equip them you need to pause the game and fumble through a menu. It really breaks the flow. The graphics are pretty good, though I know Dave's not too fond of them.
That is correct. The graphics feel very cheap. They just don't feel right. They don't move just like a hand-drawn sprite the way I'm used to on a Double Dragon game. And the same goes with the control, which I feel has a bit of lag.
Vert's music is generally pretty damn good as well, though I'll leave it to you guys to decide if the inclusion of several lyric-filled songs is a good thing or not. But the ending song sung by the final boss will definitely make you smile. Overall, one of the better entries in the series.
I wonder what's down there.
So that's Double Dragon for you. Yeah, we did forget a few of the PC versions, like the amazing Spectrum ZX, but we're mostly console guys, so that's just, sorry, the way it rolls.
Yeah, that's the way it goes, and tell us if you like it, but hopefully we answered all your Double Dragon needs. And
yeah, what was your favorite Double Dragon game?
I think mine was Super Double Dragon on the SNES, just because it was a new entry. It wasn't imported from the arcade or anything.
Yeah.
But, how about you?
I'm going to have to go with Double Dragon 2 on the TurboGrafx CD or PC Engine CD as it is.
That's a good choice.
Really nice. Yeah, so anyway, thanks for watching our Double Dragon episode, and we'll see you next time.
Damn you, Double Dragon 3, I hate you. Today's the day we find out who the real master is.
Do it! I'm gonna do it! I did it! I did it! Take that! I kicked you and your sacred stones! I beat your first level!